It's time to be upfront with yourself. Or how about we build the world that we want to live in? Passionate words from our next guest, who's been inspiring women and plans to support 1 million women with confidence and visibility by 2023, and she's well on her way. Hi, folks, and welcome to the Daily Tech Show. I'm your host, Jon Myer, and joining us today to talk about our upcoming product launch and inspiring and empowering women is the founder of UPFRONT, Lauren Currie. Now, UPFRONT is an organization on a mission to change confidence, visibility, and power for women. Now, before we bring Lauren onto the show, how about you hit that like, subscribe, and the notification? All right, folks, please join me in welcoming the founder of UPFRONT, Lauren Currie, to the show. Lauren, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome. It's great to be here, Jon. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So, Lauren, I wanted to share with the audience a little bit about you, if you don't mind, before we jump into it. What do you think?
Of course. Let's do it.
All right. So I noticed the OBE after your name, and I think this is a huge honor that you received in 2017 that we need to share with everybody. Can you tell us about it?
I'd love to. And it always tickles me that I think folks in the States get way more excited about this than folks back in the UK. And imagine I had a kind of Downton Abbey, Pride and Prejudice experience, which I guess there was some parallels. But so the OBE, so these are awards that are given out by the Queen in Britain. And how it works, I now know, is a civil servant, so somebody who works in government, nominates you, and then they have to get several letters of nomination. And then I don't know what the process is or how they choose, but all I knew was I got an extremely fancy letter, like the size of me, all like calligraphy and as you would imagine, from the Queen, to say that I'd been nominated for an Order of the British Empire for my services to design and diversity. And I now know the woman who nominated me, who I actually didn't know that well at the time. She kind of was following my work through Twitter, and we've kind of become good friends since then. And so, to be honest, like anybody that knows me will know I am not a huge fan of the royal family. I definitely find lots about the empire very problematic, especially around white supremacy and its roots around causing harm to Black people and brown people. So I was over the moon in some ways, and in other ways kind of stuck in this tension of, do I want these letters after my name, when so much of what those represent for me is at odds with equality, which is what I'm all about. And the way I kind of made sense of it in my head was, if I was to reject this, because there are lots of very famous people who have rejected them, like Paul McCartney type level of people. I think he actually accepted his. But I thought, if I have to reject it, nobody's going to care or notice. Like, nobody knows who I am. And at the same time, I have never seen my mum and dad, especially my dad, so proud, like just made his entire year. So I decided to accept it, and I ended up, you're invited to the palace and there's a whole award ceremony. I was 8 months pregnant the day I got my award. So I had like a very big tummy, and they have like paramedics on site because you're not allowed to give birth on royal grounds or else your baby would be linked to royalty. I'm not quite sure how it works, but it was an amazing day. And I really do believe and hope that sometimes having those letters after my name gives me permission to be in rooms and spaces where people like me are not normally welcomed or accepted. And I take the responsibility to kind of show up in those rooms as the best ally I can be for the voices and the people who are not in those rooms in the best way. And my mum's got a huge picture of me and Prince William on our living room wall back at home. So that's the OBE story.
Okay. A couple of things. First of all, congratulations on it. I know it's controversial to yourself to accept it based off of your feeling, your perspective, but I think it's a huge honor that you did accept it for the value that you can bring by having those letters after your name and accepting it, the voice in the room. I think you're the voice for other people who can't speak. So it allows you a little bit, maybe a different seat at the table to kind of get that perspective across. So congratulations on that. You also mentioned you don't think you're as well known as some of the other people. I'll have to disagree with that because I think you are, but I think that's more of like an imposter type syndrome where you don't think you are, but trust me, your name is out there. I'm really super excited to actually be able to sit down and chat with you, not only about this award, about, founder of UPFRONT and a product launch. In fact, folks, stick around because Lauren's going to give us a little insight of a product release launch that's coming up, correct?
Yeah, so our next bond, which I'll explain all what that is, our product is a 6-week online course in a community, and each cohort is called a bond, which is the collective noun for a group of women. And the 5th bond starts on the 8th of November. So literally my emails are scrolling, I can see there's people buying tickets as we speak. We also have lots of B2B partners, folks like Nike, Just Eat, government organizations who are enrolling their people on the bond as well. So yeah, that was why I was excited to meet you and squeeze this in this week, so that if anybody's listening who's excited about leveling up their confidence in a very community orientated, action orientated way, then I'd love to welcome them.
So, Lauren, before we dive into the product release, the actual Bond 5, you're calling it, correct? Before we dive into it, let's give everybody a little bit of backstory. As the founder of UPFRONT, what is it? Why did you create it? Who's the target audience? And I see it's really well received, not only within the community, but within enterprise companies.
Yeah, so I founded it in 2016. And the kind of backstory to that is my background is design. So I went to art school on a mission to be the next James Dyson, Steve Jobs. Thought I would make one product that would make me super rich and change the world and all that jazz. Realized quite quickly into that journey that my passion was much more around services as opposed to products. So education services, health services, because in the UK, certainly, a lot of these services don't work for many, many people because they're not designed with people in mind. They're usually designed for like one specific persona group, and that can make service experiences very painful. Think of trying to pay your tax return, trying to get a new passport. So I became really obsessed with service design, and this was back in 2008 when service design was a very new emerging discipline. And I ended up setting up one of the UK's first service design for social change agencies straight after university, and built that from scratch for 7 years. And it's now one of the leading agencies of its kind. And through that journey, and then after I did my stint there, I was starting to think about, well, what's the invisible stuff around the services, like the leadership and the culture and the teamwork, like it's really hard to design that stuff. And that was what my next business was all about, combining organizational psychology with design thinking. And there we served much more private sector clients, startups and scale-ups like Spotify and Airbnbs of the world, to help them get really intentional on how they work together, how they lead, how they make decisions, how they give feedback to each other, essentially what their culture is. And kind of halfway through that journey, I found myself in a situation where I'd be invited to speak on stage. I'd be invited to things like this with folks like yourself who wanted to amplify my message, speak on panels, be on fancy lists. And I was just very naive and didn't understand, like, why am I always the only woman here? Why am I the only person with an accent like mine? Why is everybody white? And, I definitely wasn't really thinking about feminism. I definitely wasn't thinking about anti-racism. So I was asking the naive questions, and it all came to a head one day at a conference in a city called Bristol in England, which is the day that, the rest is history, as they say, because I was the only woman on this lineup at a conference, and I decided to call it out in my speech. And I said to the audience, why is this happening? I'm staring at lots of brilliant, incredible, diverse people, but yet on the stage, everybody looks the same. So why is that happening? And it caused a bit of a ruckus. There was lots of people who wanted to speak to me about it. And my kind of design training kicked in, and I was able to really pinpoint on this insight that kept coming up where people were scared to stand on a stage. They were really scared at the idea of standing up on a raised platform. Too scary. People like me don't do that. Like, that's for people over there. So the first phase of Upfront, which is a fun story to tell now we're where we are, because it was never a business. There was no strategy. There was no plan. There was no commercial model. My hypothesis was, what if we invite keynote speakers to share their stage, to have a big red sofa on stage with them, so people who have stage fright can sit on the sofa and feel what it's like on the other side. And my theory was that will help them realize it's not that scary. They'll get comfortable with it. They'll get used to it. They might even decide that they want to try it out. So we tried it out at a conference, and we had like 60 people wanted to sit on this 3-seater couch. So it's like, okay, first insight, tick. And it was great. People who sat on the couch loved it. The audience loved it. The conference organizers loved it. And so we decided to package it up. I know people like yourself who speak on stage. It's like telling people, be up front, share your stage. My mum made like upfront cushion covers, and we used to post them to the different conference organisers. And we ended up with over 500 people sitting on the couch, and we collected data that showed just by sitting there and chilling out, you're 30% more likely to speak at an event yourself one day. So I was feeling happy about that. Nobody was getting paid. I was kind of doing it on the side of my other businesses. And, the more I started to speak to the people who took part, they'd be like, Lauren, this is amazing. Do you have a workshop or a book or a podcast? And I was like, no, I didn't have any of that stuff. So that was when it kind of started to change shape again. And I looked out into the world and thought, right, so where would these people go? So you've got the Royal Academy of Art and Dance and Music, which is very like, let's learn public speaking through voice and body and posture, which is valid and brilliant, but inaccessible for lots of people. Like, I'm not going to rock up to a workshop there because I just wouldn't. Then on the other hand, you've got Gary V, Tony Robbins, like, oh, let's hustle and wake up at 5 a.m. and power pose and crush, and also not fit for purpose anymore. So I'm like, okay, there's a big need and a gap for a different conversation about confidence that's based on generosity, kindness, empathy, and starting from a place of women are not broken. We do not need to fix ourselves. We do not need to change, but we need to understand that we're trying to be confident in a system that doesn't want us to be. And that's why so many women grow up feeling less than. And, you can ask some of, people you have on your show, CEOs, VPs, all often still have a version of that feeling less than, not feeling good enough, because it's so ingrained in our society. So then I started to build workshops, and I tested them out, and they were amazing. They sold out. People loved them. Then businesses started to ask us, like, we've seen you're doing these workshops. Can you come and run a session for our teams? And that was when it started to become, I guess, like a proper thing with money flowing through it. And then last summer, I decided to build an online version, a 6-week online course of everything I'd learned since 2016 running the workshops, everything I'd learned being a public speaker since 2008, launched the first bond last summer, and it's been incredible. We've had first bond, second bond, third bond, fourth bond. Fifth bond starts on the 8th of November, which you can join. And we've had 817 graduates from over 50 countries. And I'm just incredibly proud of the impact we're having, the community we're building. We're on a mission to reach and support 1 million women by 2023. So that's what keeps me up at night at the moment.
So, Lauren, very empowering story of how you started out. I took away, you mentioned the red couch. So I wore red today and I have my sign changed to red just for you.
Thank
Plus,
you.
plus, I noticed on your website, red was a theme color. So I figured, you know what, maybe Lauren's going to be in red today. Though you are in orange. It's a kind of a shade. We'll go with
Nearly.
that.
I've got my red notebook.
There you go. All right. So we do have red for the show. First of all,
Yeah.
I love how you talked about the couch. You mentioned 50 people or 60 people wanted to sit on this couch. And I thought to myself, she needs a bigger couch. And then you said 500 people wanted to sit on this couch. And that really shows the dynamic of what you're delivering and how you're speaking and what you're bringing to everybody, the naturalness of it, everything. It's truly empowering. And then you talked about, businesses wanted you to put on this workshop and what really transcribed from just a couch to not only to upfront, what you're doing now and how you're changing the dynamics of public speaking for, for women, for getting out there and feeling comfortable from a couch to a public setting. So truly inspiring story.
Thank you.
Going back to upfront, you mentioned a couple of other companies that you work with. What are some of those companies that you can share with us today that are looking for you to change the dynamics internally that have signed up for the workshops? Can you share a couple of those? I know you mentioned Nike, so I know we can talk about that, but any others that, really resonates with the audience that, not only these high enterprise, but even these smaller companies are investing in this for their company culture?
Yeah, so the stat that we're super proud to share is over 90% of our business clients are repeat. So the pattern that we see is when a business says, okay, we want to enroll 5 people, 10 people, 500 people in this bond, then they come back to the next bond and enroll more people because they can see a physical difference in the people who go through the program. And really our clients span across private, public and third sector. So, from the big organizations like Nike or British Red Cross in the charity sector through to startups like Spotify. We've had a few women from the Stockholm office here take part. Pleo, the expense company, on Fido, which is a privacy startup scale up. And really, I think the commonality between them all is that they can see the link between low self-belief and work-related performance. We have a lot of data that shows when your confidence is low, you are not going to perform at your best. So, this is not a let's make some women feel nice for a few days. This is a direct investment. The return on investment is significant because women who go through the bond are going to turn up at work differently. They're going to show up differently. One of our clients said, you've revolutionized how these people are showing up for work. And an example of that would be communication. So in the bond, we start from a place of what do we need to unlearn? What are the things we've been taught about how to communicate that we need to unlearn if we're able to communicate from a place of self-trust? Like that's how we define what confidence is. So I trust myself and I know how to send you a signal that I trust myself so that you also trust me. Like that's how we talk about what confidence is. And often the stories that I hear time and time again, and again, this is not the women's fault. This is because we are looking at organizations, cultures, societies with incredibly poor childcare infrastructure, incredibly poor maternity leave support, incredibly poor mental health support. Like all of these things affect confidence. And it means you have women showing up to work from a place of scarcity and fear. And that's very real. I think it's really important that we recognize that is real. Scarcity is real. If you grew up in scarcity, I think too many Instagram influencers will tell you like, you're just not thinking positively enough, or you just need to change your mindset. And actually it's much deeper than that. It's much more complex. But how that changes after the bond experience is you have so much more trust in yourself. So there's less, I'm going to write this email and then overanalyze, then send the email to 6 other people to check, then like obsessively keep checking to see if they've replied, then wake up in the middle of the night thinking about the email. Like, we've all been there. We've all done that. And it's a time suck. It's an energy suck. Another huge part of it is being really direct. Like, this is what I need. This is what I need to do my job. This is what's not working. This is what is working. Around feedback culture, there's tons of data that shows teams and organizations with a strong feedback culture outperform their competitors. Now, if you're starting from a place where you don't trust yourself, you're not going to be able to have a feedback conversation. So that's just a couple of examples of, what those results look like. I mean, we've had people, Lisa in the Bond shared her story recently. She's fairly senior in our National Health Service in the UK. And it wasn't until she went through the Bond that she felt comfortable to put her job title on LinkedIn, because she was scared that people would judge her because she'd been promoted to this new senior position.
It's interesting that you share that. I don't think of that. Like, I don't think twice about posting mine on it. And, we got to get out of that mentality. That's definitely something that should just come out and be able to do that. So I got to tell you, just listening to you, I trust you. I mean, just how you're coming across, I can feel not only, like a little bit more self-confidence. I actually have the lack of it in some cases where I'm doing this recording and I'm like, is it good enough or anything like that? But I can imagine you empowering women and providing that aspect for when, and changing their dynamic when they come into the office, and it everlasting. It's not I took this course and it lasted 2 weeks and, trails off. Yeah. I can see this being sustained. And not only through that, I mean, and we're going to talk about this in just a second about the next bond that's coming up. But I really feel that you're doing an awesome job out there and empowering and creating it. I think you found that space and your personality fits it. I think it's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken me since 2016 to get here. Like, I only went full time at UPFRONT in April, which is like a whole other podcast conversation. But it's interesting for me because I didn't trust myself for valid reasons. Some of it was very practical. I had to get the business to a stage where I believed the revenue could sustain. I'm the main breadwinner in my family. I've got a young son. That was part of the conversation, but also it had been such a labor of love for so long. And it was like, am I going to go fully in? And of course, now I think I had like a mild panic for 3 days. And then ever since then, I've been on cloud 9. And all my friends and all the women in the bond were like, well, yeah, we kind of saw that coming like 3 years ago. But, I had to go through the different things that I went through to get to a place where it's like, you're right, it does fit, it is right, it complements what I'm good at, I'm building a business that is very values led. Like, I saw yesterday was World Values Day. I didn't even know that was a thing, so that was pretty cool. So I was talking online this morning about the fact that I'm building a business that's very values led, I think, is one of our key differentiators. And when folk will often ask me, like, how are you doing this? Like, when they read the testimonials and they see, there's people brought to tears by the power of the bond. It's like, how are you doing this on a Zoom call? I don't get it. And it's like part of what creates that power is values. It's being really intentional about what our values are, and that attracts people who share those values. And it's a very value-led experience, and we don't put any emphasis on professional identity at all. So that means in any bond you've got a chief exec, a team lead, a project manager, a VP in the same bond as a student, a PhD student, somebody at the start of their career, a stay-at-home mum, a carer who's out of work, and they're all in the same space having the same conversations. And the power that comes from that diversity of experience and different lived experience is just brilliant. It's beautiful. And I'm really, really proud of the impact it's having. There's lots of them listening in on on Instagram. I'm really proud of the impact it's having and how we're really starting to become community first. You know, that's what the next phase of this is about. It needs to be the community standing on its own rather than me standing on my own, corralling people. And that feels a bit scary and is very challenging. So of course I have to grow a team and bring in more revenue and all the things that come with that. But I know that we'll do it, and I know that it'll be brilliant.
So I love the title you gave it, a bond, and how you defined it. That's very unique and described. Before we talk about Bond 5, because I want to get to that in the last section of the episode, I have one last question for you. Mm-hmm. And I noticed your public speaking approach has been described as everyone in the room will turn their own lights on. Can you explain to me what that means? Because I saw that phrase, I saw that quote, and I wanted to share, I wanted to get a little more insight on it.
Yes, so I must caveat, I don't think somebody said it about me. I think somebody said it about Obama, and I decided that's what I aspire to whenever I go and stand in front of an audience. And when I say everybody in the audience will turn their own lights on, it's the sense of a lot of public speaking, you know, the kind of, we close our eyes and imagine public speaking, or we Google image, like, what do we see? It's like a person on a stage behind a podium talking to a room full of people. And the kind of traditional model of that is they are shining their light. You know, they are saying, this is me, look at me, this is my story, this is what I've got to give to you, this is the knowledge I want to share. And sometimes that is absolutely brilliant. You know, just look at TED Talks, you know, there's hundreds of talks in there that are mind-blowingly brilliant. But I think people who flip it on its head, so people like Obama, people like Brené Brown, people like Ken Robinson, they are showing up and telling a story that's going to mean the people in the audience shine their light. And it's gotcha. Much, the focus is about them. It's not about me. The emphasis is on the collective, the audience, our collective power and our responsibility. I'm there to be a catalyst, to be a facilitator, to be a host. You know, and this is why I say at the start of the bond, because naturally some folks will come in and, you know, they have me on a pedestal and there's a bit of like, Lauren's going to teach us all this stuff. And it's like, you know what, I will teach you stuff, but I'm here to facilitate and host. Like, this is not a classroom. You're not going to sit static in a passive way and absorb information that I give out. This is a community. This needs everybody to show up, to take part. Everybody has a responsibility. Everybody has agency. Everybody has power. And I think that shift in narrative, although it feels quite small when we describe it this way, it's huge in terms of the difference it makes in the mindset of how people show up, and also my mindset when I go into these conversations and into these spaces is, you know, the people who are most important are the people that I'm talking to, not me.
Very true, very true. When you were talking about everyone will turn their light on, and public speakers, everybody's focused on them, but the real powerful speakers flip that around, and everybody in the room has that, all of a sudden that light clicks on, or they shine, or they bring it out. And those are the ones that it really resonates, and that they carry on week after week of, you know, not only watching this person, but continuously learning. So that's really empowering. I like that.
I'm glad.
So, all right. So Lauren, we're finally getting to it. I know you shared with the audience already your new product launch that's coming up, Bond 5, releasing November 8th, correct?
Yep.
All right, let's talk about this. So first of all, this is Bond 5. You have, let's talk about Bond 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then why you launched Bond 5 and how it's progressed from there. And also, I want you to share the link where you can get it. I'll put it in the description below. I'll also put it on the screen for people to join. This video is going to be out before the launch. Don't worry. All right, let's get the Bond 5.
Yeah. Oh, you're super kind. So Bond 5 is the 5th iteration of our 6-week online course. Now, as I said in my introduction, I'm a designer, so I am constantly iterating, tweaking, asking for feedback, improving. So Bond 5 does look fairly different from Bond 1. But the main thing for your folks to know is, so what are the questions we always get asked? So it's 6 weeks, and the way it works is you have 3 hours of pre-recorded videos. Each video is like 3 to 5 minutes long, super snappy, action orientated. And then we have a live Zoom call once a week for 6 weeks with me. Very high energy, rocket fuel for your week. We cater to all time zones. So we have 6, and there should be 3 of them at least in your time zone, no matter where you come from, because we have folks from all over Australia, the States, Singapore join in. And then we have the community element, which is, of course, where you find your buddy group, where you are sharing your learning, where you're having space held for you to talk about what you're learning on the course, what's coming up for you, share your reflections, share your ideas. The weekly live we have is a combination of a Q&A with me, so folks send questions in advance, and those are often questions that are very live and real for people. So it's like, I've got a pitch next week, or I've got this manager who's been really shitty and I don't know what to do with it, or this guy in my team keeps stealing my ideas, or I'm the only woman on the boardroom and I keep getting interrupted, or, you know, I want to start a blog and I don't know how, like wide and varied. So I go through those questions, and then the other half of the Q&A, people they talk to each other. So they're building relationships and networks within the bond themselves. Then we have a graduation session where often people will read something, perform, share something that they've written over the course of the 6 weeks. So if you go to weareupfront.com, you'll get a link to the 5th bond. And on that page, you can see a breakdown of every single module, and the link is below. John.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. I'm like,
yeah, the link below. So when you go to that site, you'll see all the modules, all the breakdown, the type of things that we cover. You can also watch some to get a flavour of how it works. And really those modules are split into 3 different categories. So the first chunk are about your mindset. Why you? Why now? What does upfront mean to you? What is confidence to you? What are all the things that you've been taught about that word? What are your experiences now, and where do you want it to be? Then we do a chunk on the practicalities of confidence. So these are things like voice, body, and, you know, it's really important when we have these conversations that we're also talking about neurodivergent women. We're talking about women with disabilities. We're talking about, we're not conforming to this notion of there's one right way to do this, which I think is super important. Then there's another part which is about the reality. It's like, okay, well, what does this actually mean, and what does it look like next Tuesday when I go to a meeting? Like, how do you practice? How do you get comfortable with this stuff? How do you stop your mind going blank? How do you think about imposter syndrome? And then the last part, which for me is the most vital and the most important, is all about power and privilege. So this is especially important for white women who come through the program, is understanding that your race has a huge impact on how you perceive your own confidence and how the world perceives your own confidence. You know, it's much easier for me to be assertive in a meeting than it would be for my Black female peer, because she's going to be perceived differently because of all the biases and harmful mindsets that exist around that. So we have a real deep and honest conversation about, you know, now you are committed to being upfront, to showing up in a way that feels good for you. How are you going to bring others along with you? How are you going to build ladders around you? How are you going to put your privilege to work? How are you going to share your mic, you know, to use that metaphor? So that's, you know, and I have so many testimonials and stories. I don't know what to do with them all. Like, go on our Instagram, you can watch videos, hear stories from lots and lots of different people who've taken part. You know, people show up for different reasons. Some people show up with a very specific thing, like I really want to get a promotion at work, or I really want to launch a podcast, or I want to go into politics, or I'm just tired of feeling scared all the time at work. I'm tired of saying no when I actually want to say yes. Often people show up because they've had a recent break from traditional employment, which has meant their confidence has been really knocked. Folks show up because they've had one specific event, like a harmful, toxic event has happened that has left them feeling really doubting themselves, questioning themselves. There's a very, very wide range of reasons why people show up. And the overwhelming feedback we get is, you know, this is so much more than a course. It's not like any other online course that you'll have ever been part of. So I urge you to click the link, check it out. And I know you have lots of business leaders and tech leaders tune in. I would love to have a conversation about enrolling some of your teams. You know, what we always recommend is enrolling a small pilot group so that you get data and you get insight, and then you can see the difference, you can see the data, and then it's way easier to make the business case for future investments.
All right. So a couple of things that you mentioned, and I was going to ask you, what are people looking to get out of it? But it sounds like all the reasons are different. Everybody has their own reason on why they would attend the bond. And I think that kind of brings out the unique aspect. But also, what I thought was really cool is that you do a live Zoom for the 6 weeks. So once a week, you're doing a Zoom with everybody on it. I find that really interesting because what happens is that's a lot of your personalization to the group, right? I'm not just attending this at my own pace and nobody's helping. I just have my community chat, but now you are there up front and center. And I was not going with the fun
I see
up
what you
front.
did there.
That just naturally happens. See that? But you're there. You're the voice. You're there to help them answer questions. You're not here to, you might be, I want to say like a mentor. You're going to guide them, walk alongside them for the answer. You're not going to direct them to what you think the answer is. You're going to let them make those decisions. Now, I have to ask, with Bond 1, 2, 3, and 4, and now with 5, do you recommend going to any of the previous ones, or can I go to 5? Can companies say, hey, listen, I want to check out the other bonds, or is this 5? The other ones are archived and now we're progressing on. How does that work?
Oh, that's interesting. I see what you mean. So each cohort is a bond. So the course is the same. So bond 1 happened and then ended. Then bond 2 happened and ended. 3 happened and ended. 4.
Oh my God. And you did 5 since last year?
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
That's why I'm tired. And next year, from now on, there will only be 2 bonds a year from now on. So the next one, the 6th bond will be next summer, and the 7th bond will be next autumn.
Okay, so now I fully understand that this is just an open window. All right, folks, you gotta click the link.
Exactly.
This is 6 weeks. Lauren's going to be joining for 6 weeks for this course. It is only open for that time. You can't sign up individually or take other ones. So, you know what? I can't wait to follow you along until you reach like bond 20, bond 30, as it's progressing.
I know. Sometimes we have conversations in the team like, wow, I wonder where we'll be at when it's like bond 45, or, who knows how things will evolve, there. But yeah, we're looking at, we're going to build other courses. We're also starting to talk to different businesses about hosting private bonds just for their organizations, and making them so that other genders can join in, so that there's more of a conversation about allyship once the women have gone through the public bond. And of course, we have our community, which is the global bond. So after you graduate from the course, you join the community. That's like a membership space. And we have over 200 folks in there, which is, it's not a course, much less intense, but that's really where the behavior change solidifies.
So I do like the idea of, after the women go through the course, there's an ally course that the company can potentially do, which really kind of brings everything together and opens the eyes of others who are not in the course, who don't see what is happening around them. And I think that's an inspiring idea that you're creating this for it. Also, any company that is listening, I would implore you to sign up for that pilot. Reach out to her for do that pilot one. I can already see how inspiring this is, and that it's going to bring a great vote of confidence to the women in the room that are going to have their voice heard. This is really interesting. I appreciate you sharing this with me.
Of course, happy to share.
All right. So my last question for you is, obviously as a podcaster, myself doing podcasts, but anybody else that wants to get into podcasting, women who want to branch out into podcasting, because when you mentioned it, I was trying to think back, is I don't see many women podcasters.
No.
What can you give out there to inspire them to jump in there and just do it? What are some of the things that can prove? Is there something that I can do to help inspire it?
For you, I think it's about being really, really intentional about your guests, making sure that your guests are not just people who look like you, which of course you're doing already. And also, really intentionally passing opportunities, recommending people. So, for every second keynote that you get asked to do, say, actually, I think you should ask Lauren, or this woman that you might know who's a Black woman or an Asian woman or a trans woman or a disabled woman or whatever it might be. So it's actually, it should cost you something. It should feel, there should be a pain there. That pain's kind of telling you that you're doing it right. So I think really thinking about how you can physically share your platform, share the mic, share the opportunities. And for women listening who want to start the podcast, start the blog, whatever it might be, I think firstly, well, actually, I forgot to mention this. I have a free masterclass coming up on the 27th, which is next Wednesday. And it's all about how to get ideas, thoughts, opinions out of your head and into the world. So like that idea you've been sitting on might be a podcast idea. How do you get it? How do you start to make it real rather than, one more tweak, I'll read this book or I'll buy this fancy camera, or all the different things we do to kind of delay action. So come along to the masterclass. And then I think the other thing is to just realize that all of the things that you're taught that you need to start. So I need a website, I need a brand, I need fancy t-shirts, I need all these things. You don't need any of that. You need to stand for something. You need something to say. And you need one person to listen. And I think at first, even if that person is your mum or it's yourself, that's fine. The hardest bit is starting. So I would really urge you to stop with this, here are all the things I need, and I need to get everything ready, because you're never, ever going to feel ready. You're never going to wake up one day and be like, that's it, I'm ready to blog, to keynote, to write the book, to join the political party. You'll never feel ready, but you need to do it anyway. And I think that's hopefully what I'd love to help you with also.
Just get started, just jump in right in. And I think that some people take a little bit longer to do it. If you look at the beginning of some podcasts as to what they're doing now, it's completely changed on how they do it, because they got started and they learned along the way. You mentioned, having a diverse audience. That's my number one thing I look at when I reach out to people. Is I just reach out to anybody who wants to get their voice heard. I'm the median. I'm the guy to do it. And I make sure that my audience has a diverse view. I had an awesome conversation with a gentleman called Blaine Sundred for AWS, who's a global public speaking coach. And he gave me some great advice and said, don't just stick to tech. Anybody that wants to talk about it, there's all kinds of conversations out there. And, some of those things, he's a global public speaking coach. And, that's one of the reasons that, I reach out to anybody that wants to be heard, that wants to have their voice. I'm having an awesome conversation with a lady next week for their AWS user group in South Africa. I cannot wait to share her story and hopefully empowering others to join in onto this community. That one's going to be another cool episode upcoming. All right. So, Lauren, last thing before we end this, do you have anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
I don't think so. Other than if you've got energy value from this conversation, do let me know. Like, I'm super active on Instagram and Twitter. Come and say hello. I always really like to say hi and get to know people who are curious about my work and Upfront's mission. And yeah, if you're an organization who's interested in knowing more, I'd love to chat. And just thank you for listening.
So I have to share one thing with you. Do you know this is my first Instagram Live?
I did not know that. Should we turn it around? Let me turn it around so that they can see
you. There you go.
Hey.
Hi, everybody. My first Instagram Live. Thank you, Lauren. I really appreciate it. All right, folks, this has been the Daily Tech Show. I'm your host, Jon Myer. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and the notification button. Also, folks, Lauren Currie, founder of UPFRONT. Thank you, Lauren, for joining the show. I really appreciate this really cool conversation.
Thank you so much, Jon. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Now, one of your phrases I'm going to leave the audience with, it's time to be upfront.
Yeah, see what you did there. Love it.
There you go. Thank you, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time. Oh, wait, don't forget, the Bond 5 is released November 8th. Sign up, link the description below. Hope you enjoy it. Please give Lauren some feedback on it as well as myself.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks so much, Jon.
Thank you. Bye.